So in Module 18, we're going to take a look at some of the regulations that data centers need to comply with. So Lesson 1 is identifying data center codes and regulations. All right, so there's an important practice of codes and regulations that data centers need to comply with, and it's an integral part of the data center's operation. So codes are regulations that are enforced by governmental entities, and they evolve with industry best practices. All right, standards are there to ensure that organizations adhere to accepted professional practices. Regulations are government-defined practices to make sure that we're ensuring the protection of the public and enforcing certain ethical standards. And then we have codes and regulations, which are really an integral part of data center operations, and that's going to enhance our operational capabilities with safety and security. So again, compliance with these various codes is vital, because without it, the data center might lose money. They might open themselves up to a lot of threat and risk. Okay, although the codes and regulations that will guide us will better our operational capabilities with safety and security, sometimes it can be a challenge to comply with those practices. Or at areas that are governed by codes in the data center, we might see that codes are laid out for the welfare or the benefit of the data center operations. In areas that have to comply with the codes and regulations will be things like conceptual design, space planning, building construction, physical security, data security, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, fire protection, facility operations, and maintenance procedures. All right, regulations for the data center facility. Right, many of the codes and standards list certain regulations that data centers have to follow in day-to-day operations. So in security, we might be looking at things like a single point of entrance, check-in, check-out process, building access, how are doors locked and unlocked, right? We need to monitor and record everything that's going on at the facility. Safety and evacuation rules, right? Emergency evacuation and training processes. What do we do in the event of fire, of natural disaster, something along those lines. Receiving of new equipment, right? When we receive the delivery and how the material is packaging, what the restrictions might be. What are the building rules and regulations? What kind of floor tiles can we use? Just smoking and tobacco products allowed, food and drink allowed, weapons and alcohol, personal electronic devices, and how do we report those types of things? All right, so we want to process the documentation to maintain the codes. So we need to have a step-by-step procedure to document the processes is the ideal approach to maintain codes for the data center. Okay, so again, here's a 12-step process on how to do that. I'm not going to read through all of these there in the chapter, but we just want to make sure that we're aware that there is a 12-step process to do this. All right, so certificates for the data center. So there are different bodies out there, international and national standards organizations that can certify that your data center meets certain rules and regulations or comply with the codes that these organizations have put out there. So these organizations are going to act as a mediator between the compliance body and the data center. They're going to work with the data center to help you understand your infrastructure and get the required code certificates. Okay, so that accredited organization that issues the data center with a certificate of compliance after every compliance audit. So you will do this more than once, right? You're going to do it the first time to gain that certification, and then you're going to have regular compliance audits to make sure that you're continuing to comply with that certification process. All right, so the audits is going to tell us that, hey, these certifications that your organization has received have to be audited regularly to check to see if you are still complying or if you're deviating from compliance. All right, so it tells us that the audits are going to be integral to the system. We're going to be conducted on a regular basis to avoid risks. We're going to have a certain number of people from each department that are going to do it. We're going to ensure impartiality by not allowing people from the same department to conduct the audit together. And we should cover the inspection of all safety equipment and program materials by the audit team. Right, we want to make sure we're keeping a good check on safety, health of the employees, and for fire hazard. All right, audit for code maintenance. We're going to look to comply with OSHA standards. We're going to make sure that we've got a good working environment that protects the health of the people that work there. And our safety audit procedure should be asking, are we meeting regulatory and industry practice? Are all the program requirements in place? Is there proof that we are in compliance with these things? And are our employees well trained to help us ensure that we're doing these things safely? All right, so again, what is a data center? Here's what a data center is. We've been through this type of information before, so I'm not going to go into any more detail on it. We have different categories of industry guidelines and best practices. So industry guidelines can be information security, physical design and operation, audits and service management. Best practice can be loads, fire safety, physical structure, equipment, environment, air distribution, and cooling. So again, we can have industry guidelines and industry best practices, and below each category there it tells us what we're looking at for that. So our data center design, we need to follow and adhere to these 4 items. So information security, they're using HIPAA as an example, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, which means that we need to comply with third-party audits. We need to ensure that the network connections to the data center physical location, and we need to prioritize cybersecurity so that this information is and maintains secure. There's ISO certification coming from the Industry Standards Organization. It's going to require that we have comprehensive information security management plan, which means that we've also done risk identification, assessment, and mitigation processes. All right, PCI DSS is the payment card industry data security standard. So any place that takes credit cards or debit cards has to comply with PCI DSS. Now, the way you may think of, well, what about the mom and pop grocery store or gas station that's a party store down the road from me? Now, they may not have the capacity to do that as an organization, but they'll buy those services from, not to something like Square or somebody like that. They will sell that service that complies with PCI DSS and take that risk on for the local party store or whatever it is. All right, physical design and operation is going to fall under some ANSI and building industry consulting services standards. They're going to set the standards related to your facilities. Again, physical design and operation, again, ANSI standard and some TIA, right, Telecommunications Industry Association, which will give us guidelines on that telecom infrastructure, site location, fire safety, physical security, those kinds of things. All right, ISO 14000 certification, right, is going to set the criteria for environmental performance based on your environmental management system. Audit types that are out there, you can have the SAS, Statement on Auditing Standards, number 70, which is going to give you guidelines for independent audits. Okay, and this number 70 is controls over information technology and related processes. All right, the Statement on Standards for Attestation Engagement, SSAE, has organizations that are around quality of service and usefulness of service organizational control reports, SOC reports, and it's going to set the requirements on how to audit data center staff, how data center staff collaborate during the audit, including giving their risk assessments, regular review of risks, mitigation of risk, preventative actions. So these, again, what we're going through here are just standards that are common in the industry that we can focus our efforts around to make sure that we comply with these industry standards. Okay, yes, like they said, it can be difficult and challenging to comply with them, but the better that we can comply with these standards, the more effective or the better that our data center is going to be. Again, here's another international standard on assurance engagements, right, related to SOC reports. All right, service management, again, a couple of ISO standards here. Again, best practices AWS has. Again, so these are not the guidelines, these are best practices, right? They have best practices around load, right? Thinking about your initial load requirements and what your future load might be during the design phase of the data center, right? So that you can build in capacity. Data centers are going to have fire hazards, so how make sure that we are complying with all the fire codes and fire systems that are required for data centers, right? We're going to make sure that the physical structure adheres to proper construction practices, materials, architecture. All right, equipment, we're going to group the equipment together to lower data center power consumption. We're going to arrange stuff with similar load densities and temperature requirements, so that way we can, have similar cooling efforts can be focused and optimized. All right, some of the more other best practices followed by data centers are environmental, right? Considering the environmental impact, trying to mitigate negative impacts whenever possible, right? Purposefully and technically implementing air distribution and cooling techniques, and trying to be sustainable for energy efficiency and operations. And remember, whenever you see efficiency in there, it basically means how can we save money by doing this. And again, this chapter or this module has a lot of technical information related to the standards that are out there. But again, this is not designed for you to become an expert on any of those standards. This module is designed for you to get an idea of what is available, what's out there, what data centers are striving to comply with for their best practices.